Hi guys, welcome to another OCD Recovery Instagram Live. I'm going to be doing some more question and answers today. I already did one this morning, but I thought I'd come on here and do one again so we get all those questions covered. So anything that you want me to ask, anything you want to ask at all, just post them in the comments below and I will answer your OCD questions now. Any type of OCD, anything that you want to know about it, put it in the comments and I will respond to you now about that. The reason I do a lot of question and answers is because with OCD, it's such a disorder where you feel alone, very few people understand it, all of that kind of stuff that makes it difficult for people. So by providing this free service on here with the Instagram Lives, it enables you to get those questions answered instead of keeping them to yourself and feeling stuck. So it's important to do that. What part of England are you from? I'm from London. How do you feel about medication? My mum says I should have a higher dose, but I'm reluctant. Higher doses are used for OCD normally. They can make all the difference by going to a higher dose, or it can make not much difference at all. Depending on the person, depending on the meds, all kinds of different things. So everyone is different. Medication helps take the edge off, but it is not a cure. But if you're using medication at the moment, then definitely, if your doctor's suggesting try a higher dose, give it a try for a while and see how you do. You can always come back down. I'm so fucking curious about coronavirus, so afraid. Well, let's break it down rationally. It's pretty, there's political agenda, obviously. Countries want to be seen to be dealing with it the best they can. So they go extra cautious to prevent anything from happening. And so it looks good for their own political position and stability of their country. It's obviously more over-exaggerated than it is. The death rate's low on it, but it's also something that has already died down a lot in China. But we don't know with these things how they're going to go on, so we have to be cautious. But with OCD, that will form as a form of reassurance. It's good to have an understanding of a situation, but after that becomes reassurance. So with that situation, I always take it to, well, if I get it and I die, well, I'm going to be dead anyway. So once that philosophy, well, it takes a while to adopt that and really believe that. But if I got it and I died, well, that's going to happen anyway. So I'm at peace with death. So there's no reason to be chronically anxious. And I'm definitely not checking it all the time and reading about it and scared of it. So there's no checking compulsions. And I accept death. So it doesn't really cause me an issue. I'm not concerned about coronavirus really at all. The worst that happens is I die, but I'm going to be dead anyway, so there's no reason to be anxious. Concerned, yes, but not chronically anxious. I've taken medication and my anxiety and thoughts are much less and feel much happier. What is the next step that I should take in recovery? Well, it's definitely working on your beliefs now, because medication will help take the edge off, but we need to work on the beliefs to help get under all that. So yeah, beliefs, therapy, coaching for your OCD to get you better is the next step. Any questions, guys? When is your book coming out? The book is taking me a long time just because of the amount of time that I put into social media. I'm currently doing a lot of work with YouTube to put a lot of videos up there so everyone has a lot of resources, free resources. Obviously, I've worked with a lot of people for one-to-one and group coaching, but I also like to provide a lot of free resources so that people who can't afford that, they can always have free information out there to help them get better from OCD. How do you stop jumping to different themes? Well, OCD is going to jump, so you will naturally go through lots of different themes. Just allow that to happen. Is fear of others anything? OCD can be any fear, so it will do anything. So there's nothing off limits to OCD. Is it real that you never get cured from OCD? Yeah, but recovery doesn't make a difference, because recovery is like a couple of seconds a day you might notice it. So there's barely any difference whatsoever. Doesn't make any difference. You can't tell the difference between if you have OCD or not in recovery. What is the connection between OCD and depression? Well, OCD can be very tiring and can make you very anxious and can make you feel like there's no hope. So obviously that can link to feeling depressed. Hence why I put a lot of effort into trying to make people not feel alone with all the groups and the WhatsApp groups, because then that sort of counteracts the depression. People feeling not alone, they're having fun with meeting people. It brings it all out into the open. That's really important. And all the information so that people don't feel lost and feel like it's impossible. Compulsive skin picking, same kind of thing. Understanding what your triggers are for that and how to prevent that. People seem to not like it when you post that there is no such thing as a bad person. Why do we have so much trouble with that concept? Well, it's not that people just don't like that. People don't like a lot of things. There will always be people critical of every single thing if it conflicts with their current beliefs. It's nicer for them to think that there are good and bad people, as they've learned from Disney films and through our life and all the things around us. It's easier to do that, because to really think about it, it's easier to judge, but to really understand it and think, well, hold on, wait a second, what? So the person who's in jail that's killed someone actually was abused themselves, beaten up, left countless times, left homeless, parents were in prison. Oh, and I can start to see why they're acting more like that, whereas the other person who didn't have any of that background is a lot less likely. We are just born onto this rock floating through outer space. We do not pick our families. We do not pick our genes. You do not buy your brain in a shop. If you bought your brain in a shop, you wouldn't buy it with OCD, and you wouldn't buy it with sociopathy if that was the thing that you were in relation to those criminal cases that I'm referencing there. So things are out of our control, and that's a very important thing to be aware of. How to fight with OCD when you are full-time mum. Well, full-time mum, it's difficult, but I have a lot of full-time mums in with me, and you can, as a full-time mum, you tend to work harder so that you can help with your family and so on. So it gives you motivation, and you will find the time, because people do, and mums aren't prevented from recovery. It just takes a bit of time management and organisation, and you'll get there. How can we accept thoughts easily? We can't accept them easily. It takes practice and time. Currently I have an obsession about paranoia disease. It's killing me, and now it's kind of OCD too. Fear of paranoia is a common one, same as fear of schizophrenia, bipolar, multiple personalities. But obviously we can accept them. How do we know that? Because there are humans with all of those conditions in reality, and they are at peace, a lot of them, with it. So they have troubles with the disorder, but they're at peace with having it. Same as everyone in here is. Well, not necessarily, obviously that's a trigger for a lot of people, but we tend to accept we have OCD. A lot of people with paranoia might not want OCD. A lot of people with depression might not want OCD, but it's the devil we know it, so we're more comfortable with it. It's the thing we don't know that scares us more. Is there a deeper reason why the obsessions get latched on other than the fear? No. I've had OCD for a while and my obsessions changed often, but I always felt the same. During a recent flare, my obsessions and anxiety felt entirely different and much worse. Is it normal? You're scared of it being worse. You're scared of being stuck, scared of different symptoms, all those kinds of things. You've got to get used to whatever you feel, whatever anxiety symptom, whatever sensation. Wearing it like an uncomfortable coat. If you watch my Instagram live this morning, it talks all about that. How do I start my recovery? Well, good place to start is with the reading list that's on my Instagram page, with those books there. Great place to start, for sure. Any more questions today, guys, that I can help you with? To what extent is OCD biological and psychological? Well, I imagine it's primarily genetic, and it just gets activated by environmental factors. What are your thoughts on early childhood experiences on OCD? I don't think it's so much an early childhood experience. I think it's more just environment through life, family and so on, but there's a genetic component that's then triggered. But it's hard to say. It might just be a genetic component, because there's people obviously in those situations where that isn't the case. So maybe a genetic component that just comes about like that. It's very difficult to say, but we don't need to know all the ins and outs of that for recovery. Is unconditional self-acceptance different depending on what you're accepting? No. How would you recommend people deal with past memories, real event OCD? Real event OCD tends to be guilt related, so it's always, we want to be heading towards unconditional self-acceptance on that. it didn't release for me until I got better at dealing with, till I got an understanding of unconditional self-acceptance. It just always held me chronically guilty for ages because of that. OCD is constantly looking to hold you chronically guilty forever. It's always looking for those things, you know. So chronic guilt would linger and it would always stay there. It wouldn't just release easily. So without unconditional self-acceptance, I don't really ever doubt that I would have been able to release it. It would have been very, very tricky, I think, because I was utterly convinced that I'd done something really bad. Changing your beliefs when you become accustomed to being negative with OCD, but instructive thoughts have lessened. I know my relationship is healthy, but I always feel negative. Well, negative, we have to work at changing a lot of your sort of perception of things to help you not to be negative and to see why being negative is not helping your life. We have to come at it a few ways. You know, OCD recovery, there's an art to it in terms of having a look at how we're interacting, the inner work rate that we've got going on with our OCD, as well as acceptance, relationship with uncertainty, thoughts, intrusive emotions, feelings, everything. So we have to look at various components that are driving it. It's not hugely complicated, like, oh my God, what if I'm lost? I'm never going to find an answer. It's not a case of that. It's just we need to have a look at that from a few angles to see how we get in there. And I imagine that's the case with that negative thinking. Should you do exposures on days you feel quite good? Absolutely. Why not? Don't just leave it to the crisis point. Preventative. Is doing this job ever mentally or emotionally taxing? Absolutely. Working a lot of hours with a lot of people, and people with OCD, if you asked Albert Ellis or a lot of therapists, they find that very full on, because people with OCD asking loads of questions, very pressured, highly anxious in a crisis moment all the time. So it's pretty full on. It's a bit like if you're working in intensive care in some ways. But you learn to roll with that, and I enjoy it. It's completely my passion. This OCD has been my life's work, working with OCD. So yeah, absolutely love what I do. But yeah, you have to get balance in there and know how to structure your days for sure. It's better to people who suffer from OCD stop reading about mental disease, because I feel I start appropriate the symptoms. Yes, stop if that's a compulsion, yes. But if you're scared of reading about it, then it's an exposure. Is delaying reassurance effective in recovery? Giving up reassurance is the best thing in recovery. Can't get better with reassurance. We need to get rid of that. I'm trying to let go of not having to feeling in love, but still feel sad and depressed. Any tips? It takes a while to see that. It takes a while to see that you can accept yourself and be at peace without being in love. I mean, if that was the case, no children would ever be able to be content. And children aren't desperate for having a boyfriend or girlfriend, so it demonstrates that we can live without it. The same as people who've been single for a long period. Any more questions for me? Anything on OCD? Ask me. Can't even see the bloody questions today without my glasses, and I can't remember where I've left them. Can a psychologist diagnose you with Puro? Yes. And stay in the relationship? Yes. That's a relationship-related question there from Brad. It's fear of breaking up with someone, losing the relationship, and so on. That's definitely the fear there. ROCD, classic ROCD. How to deal with real event OCD? Real event OCD's usually got to be approached with cutting out the compulsions that are usually replaying the past and seeing things if it's a real event in the past, and obviously unconditional self-life and other acceptance, which you can read a great deal about in the books on my reading lists. Primarily Albert Ellis, the founder of CBT's book, How to Stubbornly Refuse to Make Yourself Miserable About Anything, and the second book, The Myth of Self-Esteem, primarily chapter 4, Psychotherapy and the Value of a Human. Thoughts on mindfulness, very helpful for some OCD situations, unhelpful for others. Can make people very internalised, focusing inwards, not so great for sensory motor OCD, could be an absolute disaster for that. Great for other ones, for creating distance with thinking, has to be used. Like I said, OCD recovery is a bit of an art. You need someone to help guide you often and see how you're applying things. Can you make more content about retroactive jealousy and what would be the exposure in that case? Yes, I will cover that in a separate topic on a separate Instagram live. Yesterday, I've seen your post saying that every word carries some energy and every thought has some effect on our life. No, what you saw was me talking about a post by Joe Dispenza where he said that and I said that is absolute nonsense for OCD. The opposite. For OCD, that doesn't carry weight. I think those posts are hugely confusing for many people with anxiety, and it's all part of this whole law of attraction thing and creating this perfect energy in the body, which gets a bit over the top. Some great points, but I think a lot is highly confusing. The last two questions are quite broad, so I won't answer those. Any more questions you want to ask me today? Any questions on OCD at all that you're struggling with? Can obsessions take the form of involuntary feelings and emotional responses to people and situations that you normally are comfortable? Yes, but if you've been asking that question a lot, it's reassurance. Does watching these count as compulsions? No, because you're learning and understanding about OCD unless you're constantly chasing to get rid of the feeling, Yes, but getting an understanding, watching something once and learning from an understanding is fine. Obviously, we're naturally going to feel we want to get some release from watching the videos. Of course, we're going to do that. But if it's a constant chasing, repeatedly watching them every single loads and loads of times a day and chasing, then that's compulsion. But we have to hold ourselves accountable for weighing up and gauging that. Any self-help book for religious OCD? Not in specifics, but the books on my reading list cover the recovery process enough in general until I bring out my book, which will be very specific to OCD and get into all these points. But those books should give you a good understanding of things. Should I tell my doctor or psychologist that I think it's pure OCD and not just regular anxiety? Absolutely, but whether they understand pure, that is very limited, often. Best way to help a loved one with OCD: compassion, caring, patience. But tough love too. Sir, sometimes because of obsession, negative thoughts come in my mind which sometimes become real life situation. Is there any correlation? You're referring to magical thinking. If I imagine, which is, if I think about that plane crashing out the window and it crashes, that was my fault. There's no link at all. Coincidental occurrences, if that were the case. Since I'm in a good place now, I'm scared that I'm not doing enough. I will continue therapy, but is there anything else I need to do? Well, accepting that you may relapse, accepting that you may feel anxious, all that kind of stuff. Not trying to fight it off, not trying to run, not trying to internally control stuff. Allowing whatever to happen, and dealing with it at the time. Wearing anxiety like an uncomfortable coat, which was primarily what I was talking about this morning in the Instagram live, all about that. All right, guys, I'll see you on probably tomorrow with more questions and answers. See you, guys.